So Mark, thanks for being here. You know,
Thanks, sir.
we have entrepreneurs up here all the time.
Uh-huh.
Occasionally we have billionaire entrepreneurs up here all the time. What we rarely, very rarely have are billionaire entrepreneurs who have been thrown through a table on WWE Raw.
And I got RKO'd too, you didn't see it.
Who've shaken their ass in front of 23 million viewers on Dancing with the Stars.
And there was a lot to shake.
Who've been fined $1.3 million by the NBA, and who still found time to run a company and create a fund that would compensate the families of fallen soldiers in Iraq.
Thanks.
I imagine we're not going to have too many entrepreneurs like that for a while, so it's a distinction you'll hold for a while.
Okay.
Don't worry about it. Now, Mark, when you came out here, the condition was that you would come out of your shell. You'd be afraid. You wouldn't be afraid to speak your mind. We'll hold you to that.
Okay, I just got to warn everybody, if anybody is upset by cursing, first of all, screw you, but you're going to be upset a lot. So I apologize in advance.
All right. Mark, congratulations. I just learned the other day that you are going to be waving the green flag at the Indianapolis 500 next week.
Yes, I am. And let me just say to entrepreneurs here, this is relevant because to wave the green flag, you've got to go up top of a tower. And I am scared shitless of heights. And so if you see one guy go up and down before he gets to the top, that'll be me. So it's kind of like my own little fight your way through it and, you know, deal with it type thing. So that's going to be interesting.
Well, that's great. Is this something you've always wanted to do?
No. I literally wanted to see if I can climb up there and actually do this. And I went to school in Indiana, so I have a lot of friends that go, and I've gone to the race, and so it'll be good to see a lot of friends. And it's just one of those. I didn't want to ever think that I had a chance to wave the green flag and not do it, so I had to do it.
Now that news capped a week in which you starred on Shark Tank's final episode of season 5, right, in which you appeared on the Billboard Music Awards.
Yeah.
And gained some notoriety for poking fun at Jay-Z.
Yep.
You were also...
No one else would do it, by the way. No one else would do it. That's why they gave it to me. Everybody else was afraid. I was like, afraid of what? I guess, I still haven't figured out what, but yeah, other people backed down from that.
That's interesting. So they were talking about it ahead of time, huh?
Yep.
Did you ever say to yourself, why did this happen to me? I mean, did you always believe that you were destined to be a billionaire? Or?
Oh, hell no. I mean, yeah, every day I look in the mirror and, I just make sure I don't pitch myself so I don't wake up, and I don't take it for granted. And yeah, I all the time I say, why me? And, you learn in life that a lot of things are the result of effort, but some things in terms of scale are random. I was, well off by the time, I was 28, 29. I retired at 29. I literally retired at 29, bought a lifetime pass on American Airlines, and my only goal in life was to party like a madman and get drunk with as many people as possible. And I was happy right there. But then when we started the streaming business, I knew it could be something big. And I remember telling, it was a company called AudioNet. We had 10 employees. And I remember telling everybody that if we do this right, this is a multi-billion-dollar idea. And if we don't, we're going to kick ourselves. And so once we got AudioNet started, I knew I had a chance to make an obscene amount of money, and if I really bust my ass.
There's a time in every entrepreneur's life when he realizes that, this is his calling, or at least that he can't bring himself to work for anybody else, that he's an entrepreneur. When did that moment come for you?
I had a job out of college working for a bank for a short period of time, Mellon Bank, and I decided to, well, first, it might have been Inc. magazine, this is way back when, but there was an article about changing something in how you how you save Social Security from employees' paychecks. And I literally hadn't been working there for 3 weeks. And so I sent it to the CEO of Mellon Bank. Hey, I thought you might be interested in this. Literally, some guy he never heard of. And I got a note back, said thank you, and I'm thinking, okay, look, my whole motive in taking a job working for somebody was to help them become more profitable. That's the way I always looked at it. And then I started a rookies club where I reached out to some executives and all the people who had started at the same time at Mellon Bank. We'd all go out and get a drink, and we'd get this executive start. And I didn't like run it through my boss or anything. And so my boss at the time calls me in and said, "You're doing this." I said, "Yeah," thinking he's going to say, "Great." He just starts screaming at me and reaming me. "How could you do this? You go everything through me. You work for me." Yeah. So I knew I wasn't destined there. And then I left, and I went down to, ended up down in Dallas, and got a job working for a company called Your Business Software. And we sold software, and I didn't know anything about software. I took one computer class at Indiana and kind of cheated to pass. But, not that I condone that, but, and so I had a customer, and I'd stay up all night reading. I figured, computers were new, and technology was new, this technology was new, so no one had a head start on me, because it was changing so rapidly like it is today, that if I just put in the time, I can learn as much as anybody else. And so I taught myself, I'd stay up late reading software manuals, taught myself different little simple programming languages, and kept on getting bigger and bigger and better and better, but it was at a retail store. And one of my responsibilities was to come in, sweep the floor, wipe down the windows, and open the store. And I had a customer who wanted me to come out there and close the deal. And it was a $15,000 deal, $1,500 commission to me. Told my boss, he said, "No, you need to be there to open the store." And I made the executive decision that I was going to go get the check, because I was living 6 guys in a 3-bedroom apartment, sleeping on the floor, and this check meant I could not use the same Holiday Inn towels with holes in them that I'd stolen, But anyway, so I went and picked up the check, thinking when I came back and gave the check to my boss, all would be forgiven, and the sales cures all. Fired me, and so those back-to-back experiences confirmed what I already knew, that I was a shitty-ass employee, and then I better start my own.
But your first entrepreneurial job really was the bar at the University of Indiana.
Yep.
Motley's Pub.
Motley's Pub, yeah. I wasn't 21, so let me take a step back. I played on the rugby team, and we would have fundraisers. We figured if we party as hard and as well as we did, we were really good at it, that I figured we could make money at it too. So we turned into party promoters, and we'd throw these parties, and they got bigger and bigger and bigger. And we'd throw them at this one bar. And the bar was getting ready to go out of business. We were really their only source of business. And he said, "Well, why don't you buy it?" And so I took, and this was right before my senior year, I hadn't turned 21 yet. I took my student loan money, and another buddy took some money he had, and we put that as a down payment on the bar. And we opened it up September 27th. And there was lines, because, my idea of carding, I wasn't 21, well, I just turned 21 by the time we opened. My idea of carding people was like, okay, go ahead, go ahead. And so there were lines everywhere, and it was the hot spot on campus until we had a wet t-shirt contest.
What happened in the wet t-shirt contest?
You don't know what happens at a wet t-shirt contest?
I don't know what happened in this.
Anybody want to explain to it? So what happened, I was carding because I knew we'd be under some scrutiny. So I literally was actually carding. And I'll never forget this person I'll get to in a second. I remember looking at her ID vividly, and it was a good ID, and thinking, okay, all good. And so the wet t-shirt contest goes off without a hitch. And the local newspaper writes an article about it, and mostly because we were a student bar and all that kind of stuff, student owned and run bar. And turns out they had taken a picture of the girls on the bar, wet, with their t-shirts on. And turns out one of the girls was 16, but she was on probation for prostitution at 16. She didn't look like it. I thought she was a junior in finance, and that got us closed down. So, and those are one of those kismet things, one of those things that turns out to be good for you in the long run, because otherwise I still might be bartending and throwing wet t-shirt contests in Bloomington, Indiana.
Somehow I doubt that.
I don't know. She was a fine, no, just kidding.
So, let's go back to that retail store where you found out that you were a shitty-ass employee.
Okay.
And had to be an entrepreneur. The company you started was Micro Solutions.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about that.
So I took when I went to close the deal and he fired me, I took the check back. I'm not stupid. I might not be a good employee, but I'm not stupid. Because I was going to have to do all the work to install it anyways, and they didn't have anybody else who knew the software, could integrate it, etc. And so I started a company called Micro Solutions, but before I could even get it off the ground, because I didn't have credit to go buy that software, and I had to get credit set up, and I really didn't have a way to get started. So I went to this other company, and I said, look, you were looking at buying software from me over here, but I got fired. I don't have any money. I'm living on the floor, 6 guys in a 3-bedroom apartment. I have my 2 polyester suits that I bought for $99 that stand up in the corner by themselves. 2 for madness, you can never go wrong. But I don't have the money, would you front me the money? And it was a company called Architectural Lighting, and I told them, look, I promise you that if I can't make it work and you're not happy, I'll just come work for you and work it off, right? And they fronted me the $500. I took that money, started Micro Solutions, went back, was able to finalize this other deal with the other company, and that got me going with Micro Solutions. And 7 years later, I sold it. I mentioned sold my company, sold Micro Solutions. We sold it for $6 million, and I learned to party like a rock star.
Yeah, that's when you got that air pass on
my lifetime
American
pass on American Airlines, yeah.
Uh-huh. The lifetime pass lasted about 2 years until you retired?
Well, no. The lifetime pass lasted a lot of years. I retired it when I bought my own plane and gave it to my dad.
Yeah, all right.
But I just want to put this in context for everybody.
Yeah.
Wait, here, I got it with me. So I sold my company, and obviously I was 29, I went out with all my buddies, and we drank too much. Not that it ever really happens very often, but, and so we were at a steak restaurant, and it was one of those old school steak places that had phones you could plug in, right, like real old school, and, I could barely see, and they're like, what do you want? You're going to buy a car? Nah, I'm not into cars. The house? No, I'm fine where I live. I want to see if they have a lifetime pass in American Airlines, because I had traveled so much with my company that I wanted to just be able to relax and go have fun. So I called them up, and they said, yeah, we sell these air passes. So for $125,000, I bought 125,000 miles for me and somebody else for the rest of my life. And so this is what it looks like. And I used to be able to just, literally, I would go out with friends, and we'd go, go drink in LA, fly to Vegas, fly somewhere else, let's go to Moscow. Okay, let's go to Moscow. I mean, I don't know why I stopped that, but it was fun.
That sounds like a good investment, I'll tell you.
It was.
What kind of plane did you buy?
I bought a G5, Gulfstream G5.
Oh, yes, I've heard of those. Yeah. Did you buy that over the phone as well?
No, I bought that online. It was the largest. I reached out to them and said I wanted to buy one, and they said okay. But I said, and I hired somebody to be my pilot, and I wanted to test fly it first. And so they took me on a test flight. I'm like, this doesn't suck. And went back online and filled out the forms and everything online, sent them the email and said, okay, send me the wiring instructions. And we didn't think about it at the time, but it turns out it ended up in the Guinness World Book of Records. One day my buddy's like going through the Guinness World Book of Records, and he's like, you're in here for the largest online purchase ever made, which it still stands to this day, $41 million for a plane. And I could tell you without hesitation, it feels really good to be able to do that.
Does that change the recommendations you get on Amazon?
Yeah.
After that came, so after Micro Solutions and the $6 million payday came AudioNet, which was really the thing that made your
Right, about
fortune.
6 years later, 5.5 years later.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So broadcast.com, what made it so great?
Well, okay, let's take a step back. A buddy of mine that I went to school with, Todd Wagner, came to me and goes, look, the internet's just now starting to happen, and he had talked to some guy who had this idea of trying to get sporting events on pagers, beamed to you on pagers. I'm like, that's ridiculous. The internet's just happening. There's no audio or video on the internet. There will be eventually. Let's figure out how to put audio and video, audio first and then eventually video online. And so literally there was no place to get audio or video online. And so I bought a Packard Bell computer, set it up in the second bedroom of my house, got an ISDN line, which was broadband back then, 128K, set up a website and figured out how to send audio over the internet. And initially what we would do, we went to some local radio stations and said, we're going to hook up an 8-hour VCR with an 8-hour VCR tape, then we're going to encode it to put it in a digital format, then we're going to put it online on this website when we're going to require some special software, because it was a pain in the ass to get online back then, and we're going to see if anybody cares. And this is how, I would tell people, this is how cable TV started, maybe the same thing will happen here. And we put it online, we called it AudioNet, and I just went everywhere I could and told people, you need to check this out. And all of a sudden, we started getting people from all over the world, basically downloading and streaming these replays of radio broadcasts that we had. And then soon after, some people came out with software to stream live. We integrated it into AudioNet and started going out and locking up deals with radio stations and sports teams. And so literally all the initial streaming that ever happened on, for the most part, happened on AudioNet. We were kind of the YouTube of the start of the internet, and we just grew that and grew that, then did video and just dominated audio and video until we sold to Yahoo.
$5.7 billion?
$5.7 billion.
That was in 1999, at a time when a lot of companies were getting pretty huge valuations.
Yep.
Could someone do that again? Someone replicate that kind of success?
Oh yeah, you see, look at WhatsApp, right? Yeah, if you're kind of ahead of the curve and you can anticipate where things are going. The beauty of WhatsApp wasn't messaging. There was IM forever, but they went multi-platform and went everywhere around the world. WhatsApp's not huge in the US, but it's huge everywhere else, and being able to get onto lower end phones across the world took something that was really pretty simple and not technically difficult to do and turned it into, a mega sale. So yeah, anything's possible.
Well, I mean, does it take a bubble? You sold in 1999, which we now know is a bubble. WhatsApp sold now, maybe today is a bubble.
Yeah, it's not a bubble. Yeah, no? It's definitely not a bubble. I mean, when we sold back then, you would go places and you would take a cab somewhere and people would be talking in a language you didn't understand, except you would hear stock symbols. Da-da-da-da-da, Netscape stock, da-da-da-da-da, broadcast.com stock, da-da-da-da, buy, da-da-da-da, sell, and that's not what happens today. I mean, most people here probably aren't even invested in the stock market, and if you are, it's probably a 401k or some other fund, and you're not trading. Back then, every other commercial you saw was to day trade, and every other story you heard was somebody making a killing, day trading some stock. And so, completely different beast today.
So you came away from that deal with a couple $1 billion. A lot of people lost that money that they made in those days in the crash that followed. Why didn't you?
Well, one, I wasn't greedy. I mean, I went on CM. Okay, so we sold, and then right after I sold, and I did something called a collar, where I sold calls and bought puts to protect against it going down. And right after I did that and mentioned it, I went on CNBC and they're like, "Don't you feel stupid? The stock is up another 30%. I'm like, yeah, I feel real stupid flying around in my G5 knowing I can pay for it forever. But the bigger point was, I had been in the technology business for so long, I had seen the PC bubble come and burst. I had seen the local area and wide area networking bubble come and burst. It was no shock that the internet bubble was going to burst. And again, back then, people in all three of those bubbles, there was a lot of individual buying and selling of stock. Now it's almost impossible to really be good at trading stocks because there's so much money chasing it. So I don't think we're in that type of scenario again.
Let's talk about the Mavericks.
Okay.
When you bought them, it was a losing franchise.
Yep.
You had a few $1 billion to kick around. Why did you invest it in a losing franchise in the basketball area?
One, I was a season ticket holder. I remember going to the Mavs game, the start of the 99-2000 season, and it wasn't a sellout. There wasn't a lot of energy in the arena. I'm like, damn, we're undefeated, right? It's the first game of the season. This is the time to be excited, And the context is, at that point in time, the Mavs had been voted the worst professional sports franchise of the 90s. They were horrible. And, paper bags over the head type horrible. But, I've always been a basketball junkie. I love basketball. I still get out there and play. If I don't shoot, just go out there and shoot. I feel like I'm missing, I don't feel right. So it just made sense. And having just sold broadcast.com, what could be more exciting than to take your favorite basketball team and try to turn it around? And then, having this big German guy that's been with us ever since doesn't hurt either.
So let's look at the Mavs as a business challenge. Okay. So, as a business, what did you have to do when you saw it, when you examined it, to turn it around?
First thing I had to do was change the culture, right? Because everybody in that organization was just beat up and had just tried to overcome the fact that we were losers, right? And felt like we were a losing organization. So the first rule I installed was, if you mention our win-loss record, you're fired. Period, end of story, because we don't sell wins or losses. The one thing you can't control in sports is which games you're going to win and which games you're going to lose. But what I could control was the experience fans have. And from then to this day, let me take a step back. Culture, and then I also had to explain to our team and to the entire NBA, I got a lot of hate from the NBA, what business we were in. You always have to know what business you're in, right? And everybody thought we were in the basketball business. It's an NBA team. We're not in the basketball business. We're in the business of creating experiences and memories. That's what we're in. And I had to try to explain to everybody then, and a lot now still, that creating a great experience at a Mavs game or any NBA or any sporting event is more like a good wedding, right? At a great wedding, Aunt Susie, who you've never seen take a drink, has her one glass of wine, is tipsy, and she's dancing with, cousin Johnny, who's all gothed out and, painted black, and they're all, doing the Macarena or, some line dance with the bride and the groom, and everybody's loving every minute of it and can't believe it, and it's unique. And when you go to a great sporting event, when you feel an energy when you walk in the door. And that energy is the first thing that sets it apart. And you always want people looking up at the court. You want them involved. And just the opportunity to be there when Vince Carter hits a game-winning fadeaway. And people you don't know, you're hugging, you're kissing. People are running in the streets and jumping up and down. It's just completely unique and different. And so I had to really change the culture to remind people that we're here to create experiences. You don't remember the jump shots, you don't remember the score of the games you've been to, but you remember who you were with. You remember, hey, I went with my buddies and so got drunk and passed out. I had my first date. Why did you go on a first date to a game? Because I didn't have to say a word, right? We talked, whatever it is, I went with, for business and closed the deal. Whatever it is, it's what makes it memorable. Or, we all remember the first time a parent took us to a sporting event, and those things are memorable. Those are lifetime memories, and it's unique in sports to do that, and that's what we sold. So, and I got a lot of grief there as well in terms of trying to tell people, the old school guys, that no, we don't sell basketball. No one comes to see a basketball game. Or very few people do. They come because it's a special, unique experience.
I'm surprised you got resistance on that from the basketball league.
Oh yeah, because they had always been, there were a lot of people that felt that if you couldn't hear the sneaker squeaking, it wasn't really basketball. And so what I did was set up a mic on the court and stream just the sneakers so you could hear it. It didn't go over very well, but it allowed me to kind of make a point with all of them.
You didn't get fined for that, though.
I probably did. It's so funny. You talk about changing cultures and organizations, and then being the one that kind of says, "Fuck it, I don't care. I got to do what I think is right." Part of what I think is important is being able to relate to people that I work with or that work for me, so that I don't want them to think I'm special. I want them to respect me for the job I do, and to work their ass off to help us accomplish our goals. But one of the first few road games I went on was to Minnesota. And I thought, if you watch an NBA game, there's all the different guys who are sitting on the ground next to the bench, right? And then when guys come in, they get their gear, they give them their warm-up jackets or take them, take whatever it is and, give them the towels and all that kind of stuff. And they just sit on the floor. I was like, I don't really know these guys. I'm just sitting on the floor next to them during the game. So I'm just sitting there, I'm just watching the game. I get a call the next day from the league saying that I was getting fined $100,000. I'm like, what? What did I do? I made sure I didn't yell at any refs that game. What did I do? They said because I sat on the floor next to the equipment people that it was conduct unbecoming an owner, and they were fining me. And it's like, okay, I'm going to do it again. And if you don't like it, well, you'll keep on fining me, which they did, until they stopped. But everybody in my organization knew point blank where I stood. And I think it set the tone in how to communicate with me and my relationship to them.
This question probably answers itself, but you were fined a total before Stern left of $1.3 million. No,
it was more than that. I think it was like 1.7 or 8. But who's counting?
But who's counting? Couldn't you and he just get along?
We got along great. Right? We just didn't always agree on everything. And the few things that we didn't agree on, he had the authority to fine me on. And, when he fined me, it's always fun to me. It's like your dad getting ready to spank you, right? Hey, I'm doing this for your own good, right? And I'd bend over and pull down my pants, but at least David used lotion, and he didn't have one of those boards with no. But yes, literally, he was like, look, it's not me, it's the other owners who think that you're trying to show them up and this and that. I'm like, look, this is how I've always run my businesses, and just because it's the NBA is no reason to change. There's enough, I'm a big believer that you always reiterate, you always learn, you always realize your business is evolving, and there's nothing that you just stay pat with. You always try to change, and part of me changing is taking chances. And yeah, some of the other owners are going to disagree, they're going to be upset, and that's okay. This is a business expense. And he'd say, I understand, but I got to fine you, and he did.
Moving to a kind of a more somber note, but related to commissioners, the new commissioner, Adam Silver, has recommended to the owners that they force Don Sterling to sell the LA Clippers. The vote is the week after next, I think. How are you going to vote?
We'll find out. I know how I'm going to vote, but I'm not ready to make any announcements.
Okay. Well, what do you think about the recommendation that Sterling be banished from the league, essentially?
I can make an argument for both sides, but I think it's something that Adam had to do. I think there was a lot at stake for the NBA as a whole, as a business. But as I've said, outside the business, the NBA can be a leader in culture a lot of times, and what we do sometimes is reflected in culture and in different areas by different people, and there's always a law of unintended consequences, and it's going to be interesting and to see what happens after our vote. I called it a slippery slope, and it is, but that's separate from what we have to do and what's the right thing for our organization.
I take it that Sterling's attitudes are not widely shared among the owners, but how do you prevent that kind of ugliness from getting out, and how do you keep it out of the league?
You don't.
You don't?
There's no law against stupid. I learned a long time ago, you can't, in talking, not from action, but you can't beat stupid out of people. You can't talk stupid out of people. You can't expect stupid to disappear or dissipate. You can try to help people who are, and that's typically what I try to do when I find it in my organizations. But I also try not to be a hypocrite. I know I'm prejudiced. I know I'm bigoted in a lot of different ways. And I've said this before, if I see a black kid in a hoodie at night on the other side of the street bouncing, you know, I'm probably on the same side of the street, I'm probably going to walk to the other side of the street. If I see a white guy with a shaved head and lots of tattoos, I'm going back to the other side of the street, right? If I see anybody that looks threatening, you know, probably chances are there's part of me that takes into account race and gender and age. You know, I'm prejudiced. But other than safety issues, I try to always catch my prejudices and recognize and be very self-aware that, you know, my stream of thought is never perfect, and I've got to be careful. And, you know, to me, that's part of growing up, and that's part of, you know, it's what I try to instill in my kids, that, you know, none of us have pure thoughts. We all live in glass houses, and that part of maturing is recognizing when you're having thoughts that probably aren't right, catching yourself, and going forward. But not everybody does that. And whether you're an employee or an employer, you know, people are going to be stupid and make mistakes. And the thing that scares me about this whole thing is I don't want to be a hypocrite, and I think I might have to be. You know, and that's, you know, being a hypocrite bothers me more than anything after my family, so it won't be fun.
A hypocrite in what way?
Well, you know, I just sat here and said, I'm a bigot. You know, I just didn't say it out loud.
Let me create a kind of...
And let me qualify that, because someone's going to take it as a media thing, right? I've always got to be careful now. You know, I think we're all bigots, right? And I don't think there's any question about that. But I also think that I was raised, I remember when I was, one of my earliest memories, my father telling, my uncle was the superintendent of the DC school districts in the 60s, all right? And I remember us sitting down and being very clear to me that the way we think in this family is that everybody's equal, that if you go back and look at the history of people who have been oppressed, that's never been for a good reason, and it's never valid, and that's never acceptable, and of everything and anything you possibly can do, treating anybody differently for race, religion, or any other reason is wrong. But that doesn't mean you're not going to have those thoughts from time to time, right? We all succumb to those thoughts, and you've got to realize that when you have those thoughts, they're wrong. And as you know, my point in saying all this is I do, you know? Like I said, I'll go to the other side of the street. But to me, that makes me a hypocrite in some respects by trying to hold somebody else to a different standard. So I'm sure that'll be all over the place, but.
I think what you just said qualifies you for this sort of hypothetical thing that
Thanks.
I want to put to you. I'm going to make you commissioner of a lot of different things.
That's never going to happen, yeah.
Let's make you commissioner, first of all, of U.S. patent law.
Okay, I'll take that job.
You've been sued by patent trolls. What would you change?
I would get rid of software patents altogether. I read somewhere that Apple had, in 1989, Apple had one patent. One. Huh. I mean, back in the early days of computers, no one talked about patents, right? Major IBM had some, you know, but the Compacts, Microsoft had some once they got big, but you didn't really think about patents. I mean, look at, there used to be Intel versus AMD. There were clone wars, right? You know, and you would have Compaq, which was a clone of the IBM PC, and that was okay, right? As long as you did it thinking independently in a clean room, you could have clones. And you know, that's inconceivable today, yet that pushed things forward. Like Steve Jobs said, and you know, he stole things better than most, everything is a remix. And I just think that patent law right now holds us back in every which way, shape, or form. And there's places for it in physical products, there's places for it in not biological, but in pharmaceuticals, but in software, in particular, there's no place for it. I got sued. Okay, so in 2006, I have Landmark Theaters and a company called Magnolia Pictures, and Magnolia is a distribution company, and we were looking for ways to compete other than traditional distribution of movies. Traditional distribution of movies, you have a movie, either you buy it, you make it, and then you distribute it, and you spend a lot of money in advertising, and then you just pray people get off their butt and go to the theater, right? You hope your advertising will get it to work. And I thought, you know what, in 2006, television is just really pushing digital, and with VOD and pay-per-view, it's hosting on their servers is digital. It's no different than YouTube. You know, you host it, you encode it, host it on the server, and you stream it. And so I thought, okay, well, let's take our movies and put it in online, put it on VOD for DirecTV, Comcast, Charter, etc. first, before it's in theaters. And by doing that, we wouldn't have to spend all the money on advertising, because you know, the Comcast and the Charters, etc., would run all the commercials to drive people, because it was found revenue for them. And we did that, and it just blew up, right? We were making money, everybody was happy, the producers, the people who created the films were thrilled, things were going great. And they still are to this day. Somebody decided to patent the idea of, if you release a movie before it's in theaters and distribute the film digitally through a wireless connection. And they got a patent. They literally copied my idea, and all they did was add, okay, if it's distributed wirelessly. And then they sued me. I mean, what the fuck is up with that? I mean, it is the dumbest shit ever. And that's just the perfect example of, for software in particular, it makes no sense, none. I mean, software is math. You know, copyright it, yeah. If you have particular functions, whatever you've written, great. You know, get your copyright. But and even then, we can argue both ways. But patents, that's ridiculous.
All right. All right. You're also the commissioner of the economy. You have a Mark Cuban stimulus plan. Mm-hmm. How do you fix the economy?
Okay, I'm gonna tell you exactly how you fix the economy. Student loans. Okay. Right now, we've seen college tuitions skyrocket, and they've skyrocketed because of the easy money that's available to colleges. If you want to go to college today, 5 years ago, you go out and get a loan, and it's guaranteed by the government. Great. Well, it's easy to get that loan because the government guarantees it. And because it's easy for you to take out a loan, it's easy for the colleges to ask for more, because then the potential students just take out bigger loans, right? All those bigger loans that are guaranteed by the government have led to $1 trillion in student loan debt. $1 trillion. That's more than credit card debt. That's more than auto debt, right? I don't know if it's more than mortgage debt, but it's probably pretty close. Now, if you take that $1 trillion and think, what was there before we wasted that $1 trillion, right? Well, that's the same money that when you graduated, you used to move out of the house, or when you leave college, you know, you rented an apartment, or you bought a house, or you bought a car, or you didn't have to buy a 2 for $99 suit like I did, or, you know, you went out and spent money in the economy that improved the economy and helped companies grow, et cetera, created more, you know, revenue, more spending power for everybody in this room. Instead, it's going to build, you know, a better fitness center at your school, right? It's going to increase tuition, which is going to more administrators. So Mark Cuban is running the economy. I go and I say, Sally Mae, the maximum amount that you're allowed to guarantee for any student in a year, not a semester, in a year, is $10,000. Period, end of story. Now, the downside of that is about 50% of universities are going to go out of business. But you'll see it's like what happened to the newspaper industry. It would be reformulated, they'd be smarter, they'd be more efficient. And what you saw in the magazine business, right? There was so much money invested in printing presses and in physical locations, and with so much debt that when they were deleveraged, they imploded in a lot of respects. And the same thing will happen to universities. But the next generation, the kids that are getting ready to go to school, at the year after that happens, they're going to graduate and actually be able to pay off their tuition, within a reasonable time, and be able to spend money in the economy and actually help the economy. So, we can talk about, Republican or Democratic approaches to the economy, but until you fix the student loan bubble, and that's where the real bubble is, and the tuition bubble, we don't have a chance. All this other stuff is shuffling deck chairs on the Titanic.
Probably fewer kids who go to college with that.
Well, yeah, or they'll go to different college. I get emails now. Okay, I'm looking at going to this college. Look, I went to Indiana University. I love Indiana University. And someone asked me, should I go there? And I said, how much money are you going to have to borrow? And they're like, basically student loans and Pell Grants, etc., all of it. I'm like, no, don't go there. You've got, the smart thing to do now is find a local community college, take all the bullshit classes that you have to take up front, right? The intro to psychology, intro to this, intro to that. Just make sure it's transferable, but find, the best place that you can afford without loaning money. Get your freshman and sophomore credits out of the way, and then go to another school that you can afford. And if enough people do that, tuition will come down. But if you put a limit on how much money can be guaranteed in loans, it's over. Everything changes.
Great. Mark, let's talk about Mark Cuban, the businessman.
Okay.
What's it like to work for you?
I'm a dick. No, not really. At least one person told me not. But now it's totally different than before, because I'm not as day-to-day with all my businesses. But when you first start working for me, directly for me, I micromanage until I trust you. So you're going to get back and forth with me daily, continuously. Like I started this app, literally started it myself, called Cyberdust, C-Y-B-E-R, Dust, D-U-S-T, 2 words, available on the iPhone store now, Android in a couple weeks. And I did it in response to fighting the SEC. When the SEC sued me, they took every message and email that I had and created their own context for it. And so, now to get to your question, so I went and I have these guys who are working directly for me now, and 30 emails back and forth, or 30 or more Cyberdust messages a day going back and forth, where I expect quick and direct and precise answers, and I expect action. But once we get going and you start to understand how I think and what do I expect, then you give me weekly reports. And that's pretty much how I work with everybody now, unless it's a startup like Cyberdust. 2 words, C-Y-B-E-R-D-U-S-T. Great messaging app. And what I'll do is I'll ask for a weekly report, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, or Monday, so they don't come at once. And I always want bad news first. I don't want we had a great week, Billy brought it, great. I'm sure Billy had fun. I want to read, God damn it, we lost this sale, and here's why. Because I expect you to do well. I'm not in it because I think you suck, right? I think you're good, but every company's going to have setbacks. I want to know what those setbacks, what those problems are, so I can help you. And whether it's a startup, whether it's something I created, whether it's something I invested in, that I'm active in, or it's a Shark Tank company that I'm active in, and I'm active in all of them, that's how it's going to work. And, and if things are going well, then it's easy. It's just a weekly report, and I say thank you, and that's it.
What is your favorite Shark Tank company?
They're all my babies. I've got a couple that I like a little bit more. There's a company called Simple Sugars. There's a woman by the name of Lainey Lazari who started, she had eczema when she was a kid. So when she was 11, she started putting together these face scrubs and body scrubs out of fruit and different components. And she started refining it, and she's in Pittsburgh, my hometown. And she got into a local grocery store and had like 40,000 in sales, got onto Shark Tank, and when she was 19, and within 30 days of airing, she did $974,000 in business in scrubs. And so now she's killing it. And the good thing about Lainey is, I expected her to be very needy, lots of advice all the time. The exact opposite. She's like, okay, here's what I'm doing, Mark, leave me alone. If you have a problem, say something, but otherwise, get out of here. And I got an email from her, now it's been probably 5 months. Mark, I got $1 million in cash now, what should I do? Which are the kind of emails I like to get. you know, I got an inquiry, would she sell? And I said, Lainey, we might be able to sell for $3 million, give or take. She's like, hell no, you know? Like, what? She's like, no, I mean, you know, we're gonna do 3 million in sales this year. I wanna take this to 30 million in sales. And I don't doubt her at all. She's good, and you know, she just turned 20. So that's one of my favorites. There's another company called Tower Paddleboard, which is stand-up paddleboarding. This guy had the worst presentation ever that got a deal. Not the worst presentation ever in Shark Tank. There are 2 doctors that earned that award. But you guys know that what I'm talking about? I had so much pleasure. Anyways, but this guy came up, Stephen Aristol, and started talking about paddleboarding and just melted down. Just, you know, one of those. And it's happened to all of us. But sometimes you've got to see through, you know, what's on the outside and get to the core of what's in there. And all the other sharks were like, you're an idiot, da 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 da. And I'm like, no. I like it because, you know, it's a growing industry. You know the industry cold. You know how you're going to sell the products through SEL. It's not a huge capital investment for the marketing. It is somewhat for the boards, but I can finance that. And so now, I mean, he's returned all my money and then some, and he's just growing every month. So, you know, has been a record month, and he keeps on coming up with new ways to sell. Building boards, he's moved some of the manufacturing from overseas down to San Diego and across the border a little bit in Mexico, and just grown and grown and grown. And so those are 2 great examples. And on the flip side, the only businesses I had problems with, the first one I did, a company called Toy Guru, the very first one I did when I was a guest shark went out of business. You know, they didn't want to work. She wanted to be on Good Morning America and be on TV. And then the second one is out of business, but she's not smart enough to know it. And I know I have a problem when I'm like, your sales, I'm sending you so much business, the show sent you so much business, that's great, sales are going, but I'm looking at your cash and it's going down, you know, something's wrong. And, you know, then I dig into the books and, you know, she's making 40% margins on the product, but she's losing 50% on her shipping costs. And so I don't think she still realized it, but so that was, she's, you know, she's limiting her sales, which is good. You know, you don't hear me say that very often, but in this case, the less she sells, the more she makes. But other than that, you know, it's, I love being part of it. Most of my businesses are, at worst, you know, losing a little bit with the chance to grow, and at best, like Lainey, ready to skyrocket.
Let's talk about the other sharks. You know, you see them when the cameras aren't running.
Yeah.
So tell us, what would surprise us most about your fellow sharks, you know, one by one, if we were to see them the way you see them?
I think people expect them to be the same, like off camera as they are. And so like with Kevin, you know, he's a jerk on camera, and he's a bigger jerk off camera. No, Kevin's actually a good guy. He just has his own way of doing business. I think we all get along, right? But where you see tension with us, on air is because when we film, we get there, like we start season 6 in a couple weeks. I think we start shooting June 14th. And you can tell the things that are shot the first couple days of shooting because we're all excited to see each other and it's fun and it's competitive. And by the 10th day of 10 hours a day, you're like, I just want to knock this motherfucker out, you know? You know, seriously, because this guy, this wimp or woman, right, is sitting next to me, and I'm sure they say the same thing about me, and they all have the same things, right? So here comes Kevin's next licensing deal, and so that's where you get me giving one of these, right? And you know, then Lori afterward, you know, here Lori's going to go out and is going to take 15 minutes to explain how, you know, when she was young, she was struggling, and hang in there, and she loves what you're doing, and oh my God, what a great product. It's not a zero, it's definitely a hero, but it's just not, I mean, and she'll say the exact same thing. And so, and again, they probably say the same thing about me, but when you hear that same thing, it's like, you know, Groundhog Day. And yeah, and then you got Robert, right? Robert is great guy, but he's so syrupy. Oh my God. You know, Robert, is it hot outside? Yeah, but when I was in Croatia, it wasn't. And he's so naive, too. Everybody here over 18? Okay, no? Yes, okay. There's this spray that came on, right, where it was better taken, vitamin ingesting, which I thought was a scam in the first place, but it was like vitamins, and you sprayed them in their mouth, right? And Lori is talking about, she likes it, I think it's a scam. And Lori's saying, well, there's some people, they can't take vitamins orally and da-da-da-da-da. And Robert, with a straight face, as she's saying this, goes to Lori and goes, so Lori, do you swallow? And the best part is, there's Lori's husband in the background, right? And you hear his name, Bubba. That did not make it on air, and so, and there was one, I think there was a deal called Morning Head, and the producers are smart, right? They know when it's been long days for us, and they put the silly ones towards the end of the day to kind of re-energize us, or towards the end of all the shoots, and Robert didn't get it. We're dying. David and I are just dying. I mean, every time, there's times like, I wish you guys could see the outtake reels. Like on TV, these deals are like 10 minutes long, 8 to 12 minutes long. In real time, the stupid ones last 20 minutes. Like the good businesses that we all want, that we compete for, that we're all very interested in. The longest one is 2.5 hours, right? It was this plate topper guy. And so they can go on, and it gets really, really, really intense. And so, and the progression is, we don't shoot these by episode, right? There's a reason why we all wear the same clothes every time, because we start at 8:30 in the morning, and then a deal walks in, like if this is the Shark Tank, they walk up and they'll say, this is Barbara and Michael. That's all we know. And Barbara and Michael will start talking, and that's why you see us pick up our pads, because we're not allowed to have phones or computers or tablets, and we start taking notes, because we have to remember, and that's the only way we can do it. And so they'll do, and the deal either closes or it doesn't, then they'll bring in the next one, and the next one, and the next one. And so, over the course, we'll shoot like 10 days, I forget the exact amount, 10 days in June and another 10 or 11 in September. So in each one of those pods, by the time you get to the end, we're sick of each other, right? And we'll have our giggle fits, we'll have our mad at each other, and it creates an interesting dynamic that comes through on the show, but it's all real. None of it's scripted. When we're mad at each other, we're mad. We truly are very, very competitive. We each want to beat each other for a deal where we like the deal, and we all get annoyed with each other, like I said. But it's real, but it's fun, and I'm proud to be part of it.
I'm glad to hear that somehow. But I'm glad to hear that it wasn't scripted or fake in any way. That's great.
Not at all. Now, okay, so to finish through, now do all deals close? No, right? So after a deal, we're allowed to do due diligence. And a lot of times, I'd say 30% of the times, people fudge the numbers in one way or the other, or they don't even have books, and and they said they're all, because we'll ask questions that don't show up on air. Do you have a bookkeeper? Do you have an accountant? What are the procedures you take for this, this, and this? Because we want to know if it's a real business. But we do get to do due diligence after the fact, and we'll do it, and they'll say on air, oh yeah, it cost me $1 per unit to make this widget. And then you do due diligence. It's like, yeah, it's $1 to make. If you sell 1 billion, you've sold 13. Yeah. I had another one where I was really excited about the business, and it bummed me out because the husband of one of the entrepreneurs was somebody who thought it was unconstitutional to pay taxes. And I tried to explain to the lady, who do you think they're going to go after, right? They're not going after him, right? They're going to come back and tie it back to me. And yeah, I have corporate protections and this and that, but I don't want to deal with the hassles of it all. So, there might be different non-business elements like that. It might well be literally, they don't have any books. It might well be that they came across really, really well, but they don't fully understand everything that they were saying. I had one little deal that I asked them how much debt they have. And they said, we have no debt. And then we went to do our due diligence. So it was like $60,000 in credit card debt. I'm like, you have $60,000 in debt? He goes, well, that's credit card. That's not really debt. And then the other thing, the final thing to know, probably 25% of the companies that come in and pitch to us don't make it on air. And so, you know, for those of you who dream of going on Shark Tank, even if you make it there and even if you pitch, there's that 25% chance that you don't make it on air, even if you're dressed like a shark.
I'm going to open this to questions in a few minutes, but I have a couple closing questions I want to put to you, Mark. You know, one of the things that I didn't mention about Mark Cuban's week last week was that he was exposed over the last couple of days as having funded the wedding of a couple who were afflicted by cancer and didn't have the money to go through with the wedding. This was an anonymous gift. Well, not exactly anonymous, but it wasn't anybody that Mark knew. Do you do that a lot?
Yeah, but the deal is they're not allowed to say anything, and this couple did, so I was not happy. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of times when I'll find somebody in need and try to do something, but the quid pro quo is they're not allowed to say where it came from. I just don't, I want to do it because I'm selfish and it makes me feel good. I want to do it because I'm selfish and I think it's the right thing to do, but I never want to do it because, okay, here's what other people might think. And so, you know, I was happy for this couple, but I wasn't happy, you know, when they try to make a media event out of it.
Why do you do what you do? You have more money than a person could spend in a lifetime. You don't have to go to work. You don't have to work on these companies you invest in. You don't have to work on Magnolia. You don't have to even work on the Mavs very much if you don't want to. Why do you? Because
I love to compete, right? I mean, somebody out there is competing against me, and I want to kick your ass, right? I mean, you know, I say it all the time that business is the ultimate sport. You know, I'll sit down with, you know, different players, we'll talk business, and I'm like, look, you know, an NBA game's 48 minutes, you practice a couple hours a day, take a day off here now and then to rest. In business, it's 24/7 by 365 by forever, and you compete against everybody. And you don't even know who your competition is as often as not. And I love it, right? You know, I loved it when I was the young kid, you know, trying to kick ass of everybody older. Now I'm the older guy, and I'm every 18 or 19-year-old, you know, young gun trying to come in and thinks they're the shit. I want to knock the shit out of them, you know. I just love the competitive aspect of it, you know, and that's the way I am. Whether I'm playing pickup basketball, whether I'm bowling with the kids. You think I let my 4-year-old beat me? Hell no. No, I'm just kidding, but. Maybe. But yeah, I just love to compete, and it drives me all the time, because it's more the marketplace of ideas. You know, I want to know that in this evolving world that not only I can keep up, but I can continue to excel and have an impact, and you know, whether it's helping Shark Tank companies go out, you know, and look, the reason I do Shark Tank isn't to try to make more money off the deals, even though every deal I want to make money off of, and even more so I want the entrepreneurs to be very successful and make money. But Shark Tank sends a message to everybody that the American dream is alive and well. It's the #1 show in all of television watched by families together. Everywhere I go, you know, there's a parent pointing out their child, whether they're 6 years old, even 10, 11, 15, whatever it may be. You know, we talk about valuations. We talk about why is this person able to start a company from their idea and make it to Shark Tank and be successful? Why couldn't we do it? You know, my daughter came home one day all upset because she was mad because someone had started a business in her class. She's 10. Someone had started a business in her class before her, and it was like an insult to the Cuban family. So I had to help her start her little band business and all this kind of stuff, and she sold one and quit. You know, but yeah, it's just I love the competitive aspect of it. It's like playing chess. Why do people play chess knowing, you know, the realm of moves, you know, but even when you get to be a chess master, there's other chess masters you want to beat or you want to outperform, and to me, business is just a sport that I love to compete in. It's just a continuous intellectual challenge that just really, you know, motivates me.
All right, cool. So I get you like to compete. Now, This morning, Bert Jacobs, who's sitting right over there, had a kind of metric that I thought was really interesting for measuring whether you have, for lack of a better word, whether you have won in life.
Okay.
You like to compete. For you, how do you know when you've won?
In life?
In life.
Oh.
What is the measure for the victory for you?
Oh, that was easy. I was poor as fuck living on the floor and I had already won, right? I mean, it has nothing to do with money. If you can wake up in the morning with a smile on your face, excited about the day and say, you know what? I'm going to get it done today. I'm going to do something I love to do, then you've won, right? It's not so much about money or anything like that. I mean, I didn't know, I knew I was going to go down swinging, but I knew there was a chance I could fail. And if I failed, I was going to keep on trying, but, like I said, I love to compete. So even when I had nothing, I had everything. And I wouldn't have been satisfied, but I wouldn't have thought I had failed. So there you go.
That's a great answer.